but they also have negative consequences to an area. For instance, your public safety response. That's a big deal, all right? So when you have speed humps everywhere, the response to your needs are going to be lessened by that. Plus, quite honestly, we don't know as a city the impact if we start making changes without using the data that we have in front of us to make those changes. We don't know. The consequence could be something really negative with our traffic flow. We don't know. So my recommendation always is that we follow our code, that we use those as a guide to when we're going to install and when we're going to remove. That way, at least it's, we've got the data that shows we've got to do something different. Now, I will say this, if it's okay, I'd like to take this time to say, I know there's a perception issue out there, and it's my job as your chief of police to change that perception. One of the things that I would like to consider as a city is that we implement a traffic unit, a 3-person traffic unit that responds specifically to the needs of any community, any street, that I'm able to focus, much like when we have crime trends, that we focus our resources to that location, that we use this to do that. So it's something that I have to say we're not frankly prepared to do today, because I couldn't implement that now, having vacancies within the operation. We're going to have to shore up our vacancies before we consider that, but I think that in the future will be a very viable solution, and it'll do 3 things really. It'll bolster up our staffing for all the needs in the city. It'll respond specifically to the traffic needs of any community, any street, any neighborhood. And as we're recruiting officers who tend to come to our city and they leave to go to other cities for more pay, more opportunities and things, it'll give the officers an opportunity to do something proactive and productive and specialized that everybody longs to be the best that they can be. So I think that it's a solution that we might look at, again, rather than, frankly, arbitrarily putting in traffic control devices that we just don't know the impact.
Did you have a second question
He
about
did.
price or something?
I got the price. Regarding price, it's actually cheaper for asphalt versus the rubberized versions. The asphalt price with installation and material and labor comes to about $3,200. The rubberized is north of $4,000 per device.
John Staley, 3284 North Whitney. Chief, you started mentioning that you were doing some traffic studies. Are you doing traffic studies through the whole town? Is that what you were doing?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. And in the traffic studies that you've done so far this year, and I know I've been present at some council meetings, how many of those that you've done have we acted on as a city? In other words, when you found anything, or have you found any actionable items, and have we changed them?
Well, again, I think we're dealing with a couple of things here. One, we're dealing with some perception, and we're dealing with some statistical numbers. So, again, my purview is to bring the data forward to the council to make a decision. So, maybe I skirted around that, but
You did, but it's okay. Also, most cities, when you said earlier that you're not seeing the data that shows that there are people speeding in the neighborhoods, most cities, it seems that I've done research on, use the 85th percentile. In other words, if 85% of the people aren't speeding, then there's not a speeding problem. Do we have a threshold that we look at? Is it that 85 percentile?
well, I think what you're referring to is going to be geared more towards the implementation of a new calming device.
Right.
And even in our city, we do have an ordinance that suggests that we are seeing a trend of any kind, enough that we want to bring it forward. Our ordinance requires right now 80% of the residents affected on that street or in that area to vote in favor of it, even with my recommendation. That's actually what the ordinance says. And the 85th percentile is to remove. But I will tell you that my personal threshold on this, if we're seeing even as much as 40% of a trend, I'm going to bring that forward. I'm going to bring that to the council, because to me that's enough of an issue that it definitely needs to come forward. But the numbers we've seen, honestly, have been
Not even.
in the fraction, really of that, so.
And one more statement, and I'll be done. Yep. To the gentleman up front that was talking about stop signs, the National Association of Traffic Engineers clearly states that stop signs do not solve traffic speed issues.
Some folks over here.
Actually, while he takes the mic over to Ian, I'm just going to interject here. I don't want anyone to walk away from this meeting thinking that council is only focused on what I term objective data. That means what the chief and his staff go out there and collect as far as through a radar. I don't want anyone thinking that, because I don't. As far as data, there are also data called subjective data, where you look at common things. And I think you have to marry the two as far as showing the importance between both of them, because if you only lean on objective data, sometimes you can miss that common thing which occurs with the subjective data. So I don't want anyone thinking that, leaving this meeting, that the only way a traffic calming device can be implemented is by statistics. That's not what I believe, and I'm just being very clear about that. I totally respect data, hardcore objective data, but I do think that subjective data has a role as well throughout the process. And just hearing data needs to be evident, hardcore data, in order for something to be implemented, that's not true.
Ann McElfresh. Travis, would you talk for just a second on the speed bumps? The difference of how long they'll last based upon the two different types of material that you mentioned.
I did not actually check on the time for asphalt. My general assumption is they would last longer. For traffic logic, I think logic is spelled with an X in that case, which is the manufacturer for the devices that are on Russell and Wheeler. I think the time frame for those is minimum of 15 years with a warranty for 10. But they're made to last. I think they're made out of recycled tire material.
To test the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that in mind, one thing to throw out as I looked at online about speed bumps in general is that people have sued cities over speed bumps. So I just want to throw that out to folks to keep that in mind as well. Chief, a couple things just to throw out to everybody is we've talked about the cut through that starts at Sunset, Victoria, La Vista, and Old Jonesboro. So I'll just throw that out. And then one thing is the surveys that you've done. Is there a way we can see those so that we know the times that those were done, what direction it was done, what part of the year it all happened, so maybe it could reiterate, gosh, we need to check it now that school's in it. Because we're really seeing it not only as an issue before, but now it's a bigger issue because school is in it. And we have school buses stopping here and whatnot. Is there a way we can see those surveys?
Absolutely.
And how could we do
Certainly
that?
right now, by request, any survey can be seen, but I tell you what I will do based on your question. I will see if there's maybe I can publish these either on our city site or Facebook, those kind of things when we have them. I will find a location to publish those as we do them.
Perfect, perfect. And the other thing that I would offer just as an idea, we have a lot of worn out things in our city paint-wise when it comes to traffic, whether it's crosswalks or curbs that should be yellow and that thing. And it just really gives the impression of nobody's really paying attention. So I'm going to throw that out that not only we don't want to put more on our city, because there's a lot there already, but how as a community can we support the city freshening that up and us looking like, yeah, we're watching.
Okay, remember, those were very good suggestions, and remember, you're going to have a chance to talk about those suggestions in your groups. I'm going to take a couple, these three folks right here, they'll look at where we are in time, okay?
My name is Holanda Walker. I live on Oak Drive. I would like to know, have you all decided whether a crosswalk would be needed for Dogwood, that's opposite the Baptist church, on that corner where some of the kids catch the bus in the morning? Have anyone looked into that?
We have not looked at that specifically, and right around the Oak Drive area, is that where you're referring? Well, we've not honestly looked at it, but we can certainly take a look at that. I'll make a note of that, and we'll see what we can. Are you saying there's a lot of pedestrian traffic that crosses that area? Okay.
School kids
Okay.
in the morning?
Okay.
Yes.
Absolutely. We'll take a look at that. Yes, ma'am.
Been read 549 Oak Drive. I wanted to ask you Rick, a few years back, you checked on seeing about putting a stop sign at the corner of Oak Drive and North Fulton Avenue, and at that time you said it didn't want to have one. Well, since then, there's been 4 houses built there. The kids in some of these houses are still flying up the street from Old Jonesboro Road. And on that street from Woodrow Avenue to North Central, there's a stop sign in every intersection or red light. I just wonder if it's something like we could revisit.
Absolutely.
Because you can't see them people once they come
Yeah,
over that hill.
that's fair. I mean,
No.
when that area changes, yeah, I think it's time to look at
Well,
it.
Chief Butts built one there at Jackson Street that you can actually see from Dogwood, but you can't see from when they fly over the hill from there. But there is 4 houses there today. There wasn't there back when the survey was done.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll take a look at it, sure will.
Good suggestions, y'all. Make sure you guys bring these up in your groups, okay? This is where that starts some of these things and suggest solutions. It'd be great to bring them up in your groups.
Eric Lewis. As you know, Chief, we've had several discussions concerning parking on North Central and parking adjacent to North Central. It's an issue we've been dealing with for going on 4 years now with that for businesses on North Central. We discussed how the previous parking plan has not been enforced, and we also discussed how that previous plan, we have a real problem with the data collection on that, involving the time frame at which that data was collected, and also on this, going Councilman Adams' point about subjective data, about how businesses were ignored or had given input that did not make it into the final report. In our last meeting, which was at the traffic meeting, I forget the exact name of that committee.
Right, the police committee, sir.
I felt very good leaving that meeting that some issue that the current inadequate parking plan was going to be enforced, and then we would start working on producing a new parking plan that dealt with the data collection issues and solicited full input from all the businesses. I've yet to see very much enforcement of that other than the issues that I call in. Right. I think the traffic enforcement unit is a good idea, but at the same time, we can still enforce it without a specific unit. And also, we really need to either get a new parking plan in place, as in the short term. I mean, I know there's construction going on, but that construction may be something we're always dealing with, so I don't think that's a good excuse not to do it. If we could start as of tomorrow morning or sometime this week, actually enforcing the current traffic plan or current parking plan, which as I stated, is inadequate, is based on faulty data, that would be an improvement. But the issues we're dealing with are all-day parkers, where there's no lines on the opposite side of North Central from the businesses, the railroad side. We could put temporary lines down. There's confusion on the lines that are on the business side. The spaces, frankly, I've measured them, and in some cases they're 25 feet long, and 20 to 22 is the guidance for spaces, so we could actually get more parking in there. You've got issues in Sam Haight Place where you've got Network Logistics, Group Logistics, which is a company there that has their own parking lot, and there's a 2-hour limit in Sam Haight Place, which I doubt anyone really knows because the signs are ridiculously high and you do not see them. There's not been any outreach that I'm aware of to convince them or enforcement to make them use their parking place. You've got the Terra Club. I do not believe there's any outreach with the Terra Club to deal with their parking and their timing of their meetings. There's absolutely the signage there's a dearth of lack of signage on the railroad side, in addition to no spaces marked. The handicap space is currently unenforceable. What I want to know is what is the time frame for implementing the current parking plan, and when we will start working on the new parking plan with our input.
Okay, well, yes. We as a city, and certainly as a police department, recognize the parking issues that we have, and particularly in that downtown North Central corridor. That's a big deal. I mean, obviously, we all know that the city, at the time it was built out, really didn't contemplate the amount of traffic and parking that we have. So we do have some legitimate issues that we've got to get in front of. As you recall from that particular meeting, some of the things that came out that we brought forward to the council and subsequently the council approved were in fact to be limited parking along there so we can ensure proper flow and that everybody gets an opportunity to patronize the businesses. The other part of that was some wayfinding, some signage for the parking. I think we do have a couple of the signs out right now that show the Samuel Hay Plaza as well as the North Fulton area. The other part of that was going to be actually some painted parking identifiers on the roadway. So because it's so congested in there, especially around the noon hours and so on, we know that we've got to be able to identify those parking areas. The other issue, and I know this is very important to you, is the other side, the Dogwood Corridor. And one of the things that we were suggesting at that time, let's revisit that after this is built out, after the new project is finished, so that we know what we're looking at and how best to address it. Going specifically to the enforcement, I think I shared with you at that time, the issue with parking enforcement, frankly, is extremely labor intensive. Now, we're as we do with all the problems in the city, we're going to send our resources to those areas. But just so you know, for that to happen, it would take a person staged there, either marking tires, taking photographs, and standing by until that violation exists, and or coming back and ensuring that vehicle didn't move before we could even cite. Otherwise, it's not enforceable. So with we were asking, please continue doing what you're doing because you have been an asset, very valuable to us in that, making sure that people are adhering to the parking. You have your video, and there were some cameras that have been very good evidence for us. So to me, right now, frankly, it's going to take all of us to continue to work together to solve that parking problem until we as a city have an overall plan that works well for everybody. And I'm not trying to say that we're not going to be over there enforcing it. We will. But right now, frankly, I just don't have the staff to be able to park somebody right there, unfortunately, and work that parking. I'm just being honest. So if you could continue to work with us, I can assure you we will continue bringing those cases to the court, and we will continue addressing each and every issue. But again, it's going to take us, frankly, working together. Honestly, all the businesses in that area. Anybody that has an issue, please come forward, and we will respond. We'll be there in less than 2 minutes.
Okay, folks, that takes us to a point where we got to get to the other part, so you guys have your voice. Let's give the chief a hand, please. Okay, so heard of great questions, a lot of suggestions in those questions. Please take those suggestions and use them later on this afternoon or in your groups. All right, so here's where we are now. Cut down a little bit. All right, so work groups. If you are on you're east, right? If you are on the east, if you're a resident and you live on the east side of Dogwood Drive, you need to sit on this side of the room, okay? If you're on the east, you need to sit on this side of the room. So all my folks on the east, sit on the side of the room, please. All my folks on the west, would you please sit on this side of the room, okay? side, please? Can we, so I got my east side people on this side, east people on this side, right? All the west people on this side, west people on this side. Okay. Folks, can I have your attention? Folks, can I have your attention, please? Folks, can I have your attention? Okay, so here's what's happening now. Folks, let me have your attention, please. What's happening now is you're getting your survey, you're gonna get a survey, and on that survey, you're gonna rank the problems that you think are from 1 down. The problem you think is the most important to you is number 1. Next problem is number 2. Next problem is number 3. And if there's a problem that's not on there, there's a space for that on. Does everybody have a survey? Raise your hand if you don't have a survey. Do folks need surveys? Okay, they need a survey over here. Okay, just hold on to it for a second, please.
Oh, right there. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you say we need one over here. Okay, we need 3 over here.
Okay. That's good. Oh, good. Have one for me.
Who needs one? You need one. Ma'am, you need one, right? And somebody else in the front needed one too, I thought. Okay, I got you. Okay, you got one? Okay, you need one? Oh, he needs one. Okay. East, if you're on this side, east, this side's west. Okay, folks, let me have your attention, please. Folks, let me have your attention. Here's the next step in this process. You need one? You need a survey?
No, I have a question.
Okay.
You said your rating 1 through 5.
Oh, 1 through 5 is on. I have to look at it. Whatever you think is the most important to you, you rank as number 1. I think it's number 1, the most important issue. Okay, folks? Rank the most important issue is number 1. The second most important issue is number 2. The third most important issue is number 3. Fourth is number 4. And if there's one that's not on here, you put it under other. And there's other, I don't know, the survey. Well, that's something that you're gonna put down, and I don't want to bias everyone else, so you put that down as other. Okay, folks, once you finish your survey, there's an east side table over here, there's a map over here, there's a west side map over here. Wave your hand, sir. There we go, this west side. What you're gonna do, when you finish your survey, take it over to the table, leave it on the table, and he's got some dots there, and he'll explain what that does. The red dots are where a stop sign should be, and the green one is, I can't remember, he's got to explain it to you. When you walk over there, take your surveys and you complete them, go to the table, please, leave them with him, and then you put a dot on there, then come back to your chair and I'll tell you what we're gonna do. Ma'am, you have a question? Okay, good. Okay, yes, ma'am. When you finish, come back to your side. If you're from on the west side, come to the west side. On the east, you're going to come to the east side. Okay, folks. Okay, I'm on for the general announcement, folks. We still have you still have a chance to put down some of your thoughts. So I see a lot of people leaving, but the part about where you put down what you think are solutions, we haven't done that yet. So I encourage you to stay around so your voice can be heard, okay? Because I notice a lot of people are leaving, and they're going to miss out on the part where your voice is going to be heard. So please don't leave if you still want to take part in the process, because we're going to do the part 2 after we do that. When you finish your survey, please stay on the side that you're supposed to be on. You're going to stay on the west side, you're going to stay on the east side, okay?
East side.
We're on the west side. We're on the west side.
It's the right way to do it. You can do it citywide.
Okay, now west side folks. West side people, can I have your attention? West side people, can I have your attention, please? Okay. West side folks, let me have your attention, please. Here's what we're gonna do now. I'm gonna break you up into two groups. So let's see. Let's start with 8. You're in that group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am, right here. You're in the group right there. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and look wait 9. Y'all in this group. So this is your group. First group back here. Other group up here, if you don't mind. Okay.
I'm in the group that's going to jail.
John, you're in our group.
All right, now, I need everybody to pay attention. Listen, you're in groups. So you know where your group is, what group you're with. Okay, I just people groups. So get with your group. Okay, yep, that's your group. That's fine. That's the group. Now,
You're in our group.
This is the group right here. Okay.
Come on.
Get with your group, and then I'll give you other directions.
We got the comfortable shape.
Are you our
It doesn't matter. Just get with your group.
This is our second group. We're this
Right.
Yeah, we can be.
Folks.
Somehow we only ended up with.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Okay, y'all in this group, would you come join your group, please? Come join your group so we can keep going. So you're in this group right here? Okay, all right. All right, here's what we're gonna do in our groups. And I'll add people to your group leaders.
Why are the cameras, why is it pointing this?
That's what I'm asked. Did someone mistakenly move?
They probably just bumped into.
Please stay in your group. All right, this group right here.
Pointed right at
Y'all
you.
are in a group.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't like to be on camera.
And all of our group, take it all the way to y'all are in a group. Okay. And the third group is gonna be
Moving the camera to watch
and
a different
everybody else at that table, okay? Folks at the table. That's all right. Finish, you're gonna be with that guy in the red, you're gonna be in his group. The red, you're gonna be with that guy in the red, your group is gonna be that guy in the red.
We need
okay?
a leader. Come lead us.
Okay, I got my groups. Get in your groups if you don't mind. Folks, please, let me get you in your groups.
I've got it pointing at those two groups.
All right, group, come on in.
Okay, everybody with their groups?
Yeah.
All right, good. We're going with the second part of this.
I'm Joan.
I'm Larry.
Hi, Larry.
In your group.
I'm Terry. You're on Gordon Circle.
Huh?
You're on Gordon Circle?
Campbell.
Campbell
Ma'am,
Circle.
ma'am, give us a
You've
second.
been speaking at the council.
All right, folks, in your group, please discuss the traffic issues that are most concerned to your neighborhood, okay? In your group, you're gonna talk about those traffic issues that are of big concern to your neighborhood, all right? Once you discuss those topics, then you're gonna make a list of the solutions to those situations. When y'all were talking earlier, a lot of y'all had solutions, like we should do this, we should do that, we should do this. Write those solutions down and use some flip chart paper. But for now, have your conversation on what the major issues are,
bring a
okay?
chair around.
So y'all have your conversation what the major issues are. All right, good. Have a conversation.
Are you the secretary, Terry? Being home, let's do it. She had a good point that this other, she said street parking, she's on, and that can be a problem because that can attract car break-ins and it can be an obstacle course. And your street has, certain parts of your street, there's a lot of parked on.
Come on, John, we're almost halfway through.
Well, that's okay, 'cause I don't have any car in the neighborhood.
Y'all understand what's going on? Y'all good?
Yeah, you do.
Okay, good.
You parked on your street too.
How we lost Morris and Travis.
Yeah, you do.
People just fly.
Well, y'all, it needs to be
I like
right.
his street and I drive very slowly.
He's on North Wickie, but those humps need to be restriped.
Well, those humps are illegal. They're not supposed to be on the grade.
All right, folks, which poison? What color is it? Okay.
Not solution to all of this.
So what is your input? What do you?
was on the list on street parking on certain streets. I had an incident where police was chasing someone. People park on both sides and nowhere for you to go, you're right in the middle.
Yeah.
Some of the streets that is a case.
Yeah, so that's my only concern.
So maybe just parking on one side of the street.
I know they had on the news
Would be
that
the solution to that.
some other areas were considered
I know Wheeler and Jackson had that issue.
What do
They
you-
made it.
What do you all think about that? Is it an
Somebody
issue?
wants to take
I think he's taking notes.
streets that we're talking about. Terry, is what area?
Any street, only if you're parking on the side.
People parking on both sides.
So that would be south.